People who won or inherited a lot of money, what are your horror stories from people begging for your money? So, I'm dealing with this crap right now. My great aunt and godmother was a lesbian. Her partner, my Auntie Kitty, had been with her since the 1950s, when my godmother moved to New York. Now, Auntie Kitty was disowned by her family when it came out that she was with a woman. My godmother died when I was 12 and left my Auntie Kitty everything in her will, which made things strained with my dad's family, though my dad and one of his brothers still spoke to her. Then I moved over to New York at 18 for school, and knowing no one else in the city, we became close. She was thrilled that I wanted to have a relationship with her and spend time with her, and didn't hesitate to think of her as my aunt, even though she technically wasn't. And she was legit the greatest, and we spent holidays together, and she would come to things I worked on, and I knew all of her friends, and she knew mine. I basically spent a decade with her being like another grandmother to me. Then she died a few months ago, and it sucks. I miss her a lot, to put it lightly, but she was in her 90s and lived a long life. Thing was, she left everything to me. Now, I knew she had money, it was hard to miss, but I didn't know how much she had. I ended up with a decent-sized amount of cash and investments, a brownstone in the city, and a place in on the beach in the Carolinas. Her family came out of the woodwork when she died, sniffing around for her money and demanding I give them the beach house or cash or whatever. Her will states explicitly that they are not to receive anything from her estate, and it all goes to me. But they're threatening to sue since they're sure she wanted to give them something, even though she hadn't spoken to any of them in over half a century, and in some cases had never even met them. On the opposite side of things, my dad's sister and brothers are pissed that they didn't get anything because they'd occasionally send her a Christmas card. None of them view it as fair that I was giving everything when they were given nothing. None of them showed up to her funeral. None of them had properly seen her or spoke to her in years except my dad. One of my aunts has gone so far as harassing my boyfriend since he's apparently only in it for the money, despite the fact that he had a better relationship with her than she did and had to help me plan her funeral. It's basically a crap show, and I hate it. Okay, y'all, I just want to say I feel like this is going to be a really good video. I don't know about you, but I feel like this is going to be a good one. But I also sympathize with OP. But anyway, next story. So my grandmother had an education fund made for me and put money in it every single month. I was pretty young and my mom was poor and wanted to use that money to buy pot and cigarettes and other stuff. She kept bugging me and bribing me with stuff. I told my grandmother, who made sure my mom could not access the account. Next story. Family came out of the woodwork threatening to sue for the money. Family has a surprise visit, and they looked around thinking I hid the money in the house somewhere. But no amount of me telling them that we inherited less than $500 would make them go away. They didn't believe it. Now, they just hate all of us, and I no longer get invited to family outings. Next story. When my grandmother died, she left money to pay for my entire college education, including graduate school. At the time, it seemed that all of my friends needed money. So, to be true to my grandmother's wishes, I said nothing about the inheritance and paid for those college years as she intended. If I had done otherwise, they would have begged me for money for a variety of needs. Next story. My grandpa was pretty well off, and he suddenly died of undiagnosed prostate cancer a decade or so ago. The kids from his second marriage immediately swooped in and started claiming everything as theirs, despite us being just as close to him as they were. It ended with a lawsuit and the family being split in half, with us not regarding them as family anymore. We ended up basically getting nothing, and I'm frankly not impressed with how it was handled by either side. It's really sad seeing people you've known your whole life acting like that and ruining decades of being family in a couple of weeks. Next story. I inherited a fair amount of money when my grandfather passed away. My husband and I were planning on using it to purchase our first house. We had been saving but clearly could have a much lower mortgage with this windfall. Well, my husband works a side business where he builds custom vehicles. One friend who was running out of money and his car was only about halfway done found out about the inheritance, only because we stupidly asked his advice on mortgage options, and then decided he was going to pull his car because he didn't have the funds to finish it and then sue us for $10,000. And unfortunately, we got a lawyer and ended up spending over $3,500 to have him say that the customer usually is right and we'd be further ahead to just settle and pay him, because the lawyer fees would be much more if we continued to fight. Breaks my heart to this day that a good chunk of my inheritance went to pay that jerkbag off so he could take his vehicle somewhere else to get it finished. Next story. My grandmother has dementia, and her husband is dying of cancer. They have over $1 million in assets that have been divided between 4 sons. One son is a mentally ill junkie who has been in and out of jail. He has already been promised their house as his share of the inheritance, but he has been doing all he can to get more from his mother, while her husband has been in the hospital slowly dying the last few months. He steals her credit cards, opens new ones in her name, and attempts to access their money through online banking. My step-grandfather is trying to get her declared mentally incompetent to prevent my uncle from manipulating her finances, but between his health issues and being in and out of the hospital, it's proving difficult. When her husband dies, which will unfortunately be soon, he plans on moving into their house, which he already sees as his, and most likely milking my grandmother dry. The sad part is, she has dementia and has no idea what is going on. Next story. I am fortunate that my father's family is well off. Everything is locked into trust funds since my grandparents' death. Now that my father has died, though, I have control over my father's share. My uncle, who is a weed-dealing/smoking in and out of jail, never held a job, dropkick son of a loving woman who always have him hand and brother to my father, who tried to help support him even though he was sick for many years. But anyways, I have withdrawn my share because that family sucks at financial management, and I have reinvested it into my own trust. Well, Uncle has started calling me monthly from jail asking for help with lawyers or to pay for something. He still has his living brothers, but he thinks a girl 3 times younger than him should be supporting him because he can't get a job and I'm family. I feel nothing for the man who has thrown his life away and leached it off of my father in his last years. I am glad, though, that it's better him harassing me than harassing my mom. Edit. For those saying change your phone number, he has my work phone number. If I were to change it, it is a lot more hassle than he deserves. Clients, explanation, business cards, directories. It's easier to take me off of his approval call list in jail. That way, when he is out and contacts me, at least I know that he is out of jail. Also, I know this is under a question about horror stories, but really, I got this. No need to offer obvious advice. Next story. I won a settlement lawsuit after almost dying in a fire. I was under 18 at the time of the incident, but was 18 when it finally settled. My mother told me unless I gave her half of my settlement, I would have to find a new place to live. I was in my senior year of high school when this happened. She said she deserved it because she was the only one in my life who was always there for me. I didn't give her the money. She kicked me out and tried to keep some of my personal belongings, not like I had much since everything was lost in the fire though, and we didn't talk for months until she randomly showed up at my house one day. She asked me for rent money and gave me some BS sob story. I wrote her a check for $5,000, hoping it would make her go away. And it did for a time. She and I barely spoke until years later when I was pregnant. A few years ago, I was in a bad car accident, hit by an 18-wheeler, and I got some money. I told no one, especially my mom. She has insisted numerous times I was entitled to a settlement for it and should speak to a lawyer that she found. She took it upon herself to talk to lawyers on my behalf, or tried to. I just ignored her for months until she finally gave it up. Next story. Even more pathetic because it was so little money. Grandma lived off of her pension after selling her house way cheap to Aunt. Then, after she died, other Aunt divided up her money and stuff. I think each grandkid got $1,000. One piece of her inexpensive furniture, a few little things, none of it worth any money. But Cousin Kay, whose parents got a super cheap house that she keeps saying she wants, carried on about how she was promised everything. She wanted the 10-year-old freezer that her sister with little kids got. She wanted the dishes. She wanted. 10 years later, I avoid speaking to her because I'm sure I'll still hear about all of Grandma's valuables that other Aunt threw away. I think the rest of us should have just gone in together, said take one thing, then someone else's turn, and we all should have left after round 2 and left the rest for Cousin Kay to take everything else, and saved ourselves a lot of accusations. Next story. My mom and dad won big once at a casino around 25 years back, one of those once-in-a-lifetime medium-level jackpots, around $10,000. Most of that money went into the bills and a few family fun things over the course of a summer. However, during that time, my aunt and a few of my mother's relatives kept bullying her for cash. Her relatives kept demanding she owed them some of the cash because the casino trip was with them. They invited my folks along and drove them. So by their logic, they were obliged to part of the winnings. My aunt, on the other hand, just kept begging so she could help out with her kids' debts. They are very spoiled kids, and over the years have run themselves into the ground financially. And every time they're mother, my aunt digs them out. But my folks never gave in, even though my mother's relatives threatened to sue, which they didn't, and my aunt eventually just moved on. After this, no one on my mother's side would go with my folks without making clear that if they won, they would get some of the money. Needless to say, my parents never went with them again, and for a time, went on their own. As for me, I was young at the time and used to not having much growing up because we were very poor. This cash really did us a service, but the things that stand out to me the most are all of the abusive calls my mother and father got about this money, and how I found out later on that these people beyond my aunt all made near six-figure incomes. They didn't need the money, they just wanted it. Next story. I actually didn't inherit anything at all because my mom died broke and in debt, but I have a few grand in donations for a spot at her cemetery. Still haven't decided what spot we want. My sister found out and keeps asking me for money from the donation fund. I sent her $100 just because I know she lives in the middle of futtbuck nowhere. Then she keeps asking for $40 here and there. When I tell her no, she later posts a photo of her smoking weed. Ah yes, I'm sure you really needed the money for groceries. It's quite pathetic. She doesn't even realize how expensive the cemetery spot is. We don't even have enough to cover a decent spot at all. Next story. Last December, I got money that I didn't truly earn. Rest of my family is okay with it and congratulates me every chance they get. My mother likes bragging that her son is rich because he's so smart, even though what I did was pure luck. It's all fun though, except for my brother. He keeps trying to rope me into new real estate and investment deals. Says that this is a great opportunity and keeps pressuring me to buy. Tries to manipulate me emotionally and belittles my intelligence for not taking it. The deals aren't bad, they're pretty good, and any normal person probably would take an interest. But the stupid part is that my brother is a lawyer who still has more assets than I do. But he isn't willing to risk his own money. He wants me to pay for the deals, and he gets to keep the profits. Basically, I'm just another source of loan money to him. Even worse is that he expects me not to charge interest or take a share of the profits because we're family. Sure, he says the properties will appreciate in value, and I believe him, but I also see through the bullcrap when he's saying he's going to cut me a fair deal in the future. Even though he's a lawyer, I can't even trust anything he puts down in writing, since I'm certain there is some clause that he can twist to get me. Next story. Friend of mine didn't even win any lottery. She finally got approved for disability benefits after years of jumping through bureaucratic hoops. Almost immediately, her family descended like vultures, demanding money for this or that. They didn't believe that her benefits in this case basically means the bare minimum necessities to not die of starvation. They thought she was sitting on a nest egg of thousands of dollars and started screaming at her and calling her a liar when she said she was actually broke after one trip to the grocery store. First of all, who the F screams at a disabled person demanding money? Second, why the F do they think she owes them a single effing dime, even if she was rich, when they can't even give her an effing ride to the doctor without demanding gas money? I told her to tell them all to go F themselves with a fire hydrant, but she's too nice. That probably answers the questions above. Next story. When my grandmother died, my uncle asked my grandfather for his classic car worth about $30,000. My grandfather turned him down because he knew he would just sell it. He offered it to my father, but my father said no. Luckily, my grandfather still has it. I need to call him and convince him to give it to my cousin, my sister, or me, because other than my dad, we are the only ones who won't sell it. Hell, I still have my great-grandparents' car that I won't sell. It looks like crap, but it runs and I'm slowly working in it. Next story. When my great-grandmother passed away, she left her house to my grandmother and my mother in her will. My grandmother is still alive, but all of my 5 mother siblings recently learned that when my grandmother does pass, the house will go to my mom. They fight with her constantly, trying to trick her and harass her into moving out when she's the only one out of 6 that takes care of my grandmother, who is blind, partially disabled, and has kidney problems. And a few of them have even said that as soon as my grandmother dies, they're taking my mom to court to take the house away. Little do they know, my mom doesn't want the house. She wants to sell it so she can move closer to her grandkids, but she said it might be easier to let her siblings fight over it and then tell them to F themselves. These people also tried to have me arrested for stealing my grandmother's $30K settlement from a car accident because I happened to buy a $23,000 car the week before she got the money. Next story. When I was diagnosed with cancer, my job took up a collection for me. They were very generous and it grew to a fair amount of money, which we used throughout my treatment so that we didn't worry about bills and whatnot. My sister, well, she found out about the money and began to ask for money, never once offering for help, but always having a sob story about why she needed the cash. So I lied and I said all of the money was gone. She stopped calling altogether. Oh, and when I was a toddler, my mom passed away in a car accident. I had bonds given to me from family friends to help me later in life. My aunt who adopted me cashed all of the bonds before I even finished elementary school, leaving me with nothing. Next story. My dad inherited the family farm/ranch, which is very valuable in paper as we have quite a bit of land. But cash-wise, it makes enough to pay the taxes on it and mostly support mom and dad. It's 2 or 3 big payments a year when crops come in, but my dad isn't great with money, so I usually end up helping him with bills in the summers between the crops, and my mother ensures I get paid back first thing when the wheat comes in. My dad will decide that they need the more expensive option of things and that they could get by with the cheaper version and buy it without consulting my mother. He really doesn't grasp the concept of a budget. He just sees that there is money in the account and doesn't think about the fact that it has to last for the rest of the year or how much the bills cost every month. Now it's organized as a corporation for tax purposes, so I am the vice president, which means mom and dad show up with papers for me to sign now and then, but we recently signed a lease with a wind energy company that has the potential to be a lot of money when they start building and producing. My parents, they came to me and said they want me involved in the process and meeting with the people from the company so that the company understands I have the same authority mom and dad do. But it's none of my brother's damn business because he's deep in debt and just keeps digging further and further and doesn't care about the heritage of the place. Built from 50 acres purchased by my great-grandfather in the end of the Dust Bowl while he was driving a delivery wagon for the general store after they lost everything in the Dust Bowl itself to keep fed. But again, he isn't interested in the details or the work of keeping it afloat or how much we actually owe to the people who rent the farmland because they've made expensive improvements on the agreement that we pay them back and they keep the lease at least until it's paid. They'll keep it afterwards too. They're great tenants and we have no interest or ability to start farming it ourselves at this stage. Mom and I have done some blue sky dreaming about what if, but at this stage, all that's guaranteed is the equivalent of one more crop a year for 30 years on the base land lease, which will be a huge help for them and take some pressure off of me and my enough to get by and put a little away income. Anything over that doesn't kick in until they start building, at which point they get a flat payment for each structure built, then a yearly payment for each windmill based on its production capacity, plus a royalty payment based on production. I did some math based on the maximum number of windmills for acreage and the minimum payment per tower, didn't even try to fiddle with the royalty payments, and it has the potential to add up to over $160K a year in an area that averages $30 to $40K a year. It won't, of course, but if my brother ever found out about it, he'd expect that my parents bail him out of debt and pay for things for him. I just want them to be comfortable and to afford things like trips to see friends and finish remodeling the house that they live in. And I love the land. I know that no matter where my dreams may take me, I always have home waiting, and I want my future kids and my nephews to have that same sense of security. Next story. I received my back pay veteran benefits in lump sum. One a-hole friend of mine joined a multi-level marketing scheme called Unique and tried to get me to squander my money. Another friendship fell apart. There was a lot of things, but I feel like the money added to it. Then another friend tried to be my best friend so I would give her a $10K loan. Some friendships fell apart because I saw how these people treated me and I wasn't about it. No one understood that I was using that money to get back on my feet. I was paying off a lot of debt, but basically, I lost some friends. Actually, I lost a lot of friends, but I then knew who were my real friends, and surprisingly, not that many people. Okay, everybody, fun little thought question for you. How much would you have to win in the lottery until you start giving it out to the family and the homies? I feel like for me, $150,000 to $200,000. And then I'd be like, all right, let me see if I can give some to the homies. Like $100K is a lot, but it's not a lot. But I kind of want that just for me. But anything over that, then, I'm going to start being generous. Okay. And then we'll have an undersparked $10,000 giveaway because why not? Anyway, next story. So I do estate valuations for various attorneys and such, just a sideline and for fun. Get a call to do one. There were two brothers, etc. The way I do it, you pay me up front, usually about $500 for small stuff, and I come in, make baseline valuations of personal property, not real estate, and give estimates based upon what the goods would probably realize at an auction. Usually the big stuff is liquidated and divided monetarily, so I don't fool with that. Went in with my usual blather about if you people have one uncivil word, I will walk and your money will be forfeit speech, and proceeded to do a round the goods listing / eval with one of my people. They were following us around, smiling and making small talk. One of them had a wife, the other had a girlfriend. They were all very amicable. When we got done, they asked if I would look and see if their division of property was fair, as they had done it prior to our arrival. They indicated that Salarmi was coming the next day to pick up everything else. I looked at their lists, and they were each for things that the other did not want. And the lists were equal to within exactly $10 of my estimates. The brother who had the $10 advantage got out his wallet and gave his brother two $5 bills. The other brother said, "Well, I owe you $5 from lunch last week," and he gave one back. Then they told me that it was worth $500 to know that they were even and it wouldn't mess up their relationship. They called me about 2 weeks later asking if I had cashed their check, as they were closing out the estate. I had torn it up, and I told them so. They sent the money to the Wind River Tribal Youth Program, and I haven't thought about that in years. Thanks, Reddit. Next story. When my great-grandmother was in the hospital on her deathbed, we had the monks come in and we were doing prayer. It was her request, it comforted her. So most of the family showed up and an estranged aunt showed up too. My grandmother wasn't even dead yet and my aunt was buzzing around my uncle, who would be the inheritor, and she was asking about the money, asking for some while we were all doing prayer. The praying wasn't even loud, so the only booming voice over the monks singing was her. It was incredibly embarrassing because she didn't even attempt to acknowledge my grandmother at all in the hospital room on her last day. And I can safely say she never saw an ounce of it, and my uncle split it all up and put it all in the younger kid's savings. Next story. After 4 years, I won a pretty big amount of money from a lawsuit, a not-at-fault car accident that almost took my life. The first thing my mom did was tell me I needed to pay her immediately for taking care of me, apparently wheeling me around in a wheelchair for months and taking me to physical therapy to learn how to walk again, plus mental therapy equated to $30,000 in her mind. She hounded me every day, throwing fits like a toddler about getting her money. I didn't plan on giving her some compensation for housing me and driving around during that time. But wow, never have I seen greed so high once she saw the check I received. She also basically forced me to go buy myself a house immediately and move out after she got her money. Yes, I know you can't force someone to do anything, and I eventually wanted to, but I wasn't necessarily ready at that point. My best friend also passed away from cancer right when all of this happened. I fell into a pretty deep depression and didn't feel happy at all about the money. Now, here I am. I own a house in full and have pretty much no money left. The bank would only loan me $90K if I put $200K down. I decided that was ridiculous and just bought outright. The only thing I can rest assured is that if/when I sell my house, I should get that money back plus some. Currently in real estate school, so I could sell my own home if need be. It does feel good not to have a mortgage though, honestly. It really didn't shock me the way my mother reacted to the money since she grew up rich and married into middle class. My mom has always been obsessed with money. In her mind, my accident was just another means for her to acquire more of it. She didn't and still doesn't understand how much I went through. Broken ribs, brain injury, shattered left pelvis that required emergency surgery and a titanium plate/screws to be put in to hold it together, bleeding in my lungs, deep cuts and bruises, a month-long hospital stay, PTSD, 3 years of therapy, 2 years of physical therapy, the inability to walk for 4 months, pain for years. I still do get pain/issues from the metal in my pelvis, especially while pregnant. Then there's loss of friends, loss of job, having to quit college, being on pain meds for years, overall depression and anxiety. She claimed it happened to her just as much as me and deserved money from it. I thank God every day for my physical ability to be even able to carry a child, though it was insanely painful and needed a C-section by default. I will say though, going through what I have, I've learned what is truly important. It's not about the money. Not at all. It's about the memories you make and the people you share them with. I truly now believe that happiness comes from within yourself. I've learned how to love myself, even with all of my scars, physical and emotional. I'm very fortunate to be able to own a home, but it really isn't even about that. Life is as beautiful as you make it be. Anything can happen in an instant. Tell the people you care about them that you love them. Each day truly is a gift. I'm thankful to be alive, my ability to walk, and to now be a mother myself. Next story. I will share my current nightmare that started right before my mom died. My mother was an alcoholic who ended up dying of liver failure last May. After my mom died, we opened the estate with the state of PA to begin the process of going through her finances and transferring the deed from her house to me. Well, as soon as my info was registered with the state, every realtor came out of the woodwork to harass me about selling her property. I got phone calls, letters, people showed up and wouldn't leave. We had to call the police multiple times on one realtor. I luckily had a great estate lawyer who would hit the people with C&Ds and follow up with the police when they continued to show up. My mom, she had a townhome in a very, very desirable neighborhood. It's an easy sale for any realtor, but I was still surprised on the sheer number of realtors who harassed us about it. We still have 2 who stop by our house every once in a while and leave a business card. I have a sign stating that we are not selling, though, taped to the door. Next story. My aunt stole a large sum of money from me. When I turned 18, I was to get a check for 18 years of per cap with interest. 6 months before my 18th, she quit her job and started working at a small 5-location credit union. She asked me to move my accounts there to help her meet quotas since she just started and would do joint accounts so I could get the benefits too. 10 months later, I thought she had a better job and was reaping the benefits when she started to remodel her house and spend her nights at the bar. I didn't think anything of it because she was my aunt and had a decent job. When I went to change banks because I was moving across the country, she told me she already withdrew the money and I couldn't get it, and since it was a joint account, there was nothing I could do about it. While not fine, the worst thing about it was that she claimed it was what my mother wanted and was in her will. Then, when disproved, said she deserved it more than me, and then eventually that she did it because it was done in a legal way, so it was hers now. She convinced her boss that I was trying to ruin her life, so I couldn't even go to them for help. Eventually, I got 60% of it back from a settlement, but she burned all of the bridges she could in the family. She would cut off any contact with people who asked what the problem was, or would threaten if they talked about it. Since she was getting free childcare from her mom, she said she would rather pay for childcare than to listen to her mom talk about me. So my grandmother had to keep quiet or she would lose her other 2 grandkids and her last living daughter along with me because I was moving across the country. Total blindside. Next story. My mom died. A friend of hers pestered me for money because he knew that she had some, and not in a "I miss your mom and I hope you're okay" sort of way. He says, "Guess who?" "I don't know. Who is it?" "I'll call back when you're in a better mood." Hey, don't bother calling back if you're not going to tell me who you are. And yes, I have caller ID. I was just too upset to remember it. My father died first, then my mom, and I have no siblings. Then he says, "Hey, this is Lewis. Can you help me out? I need some money. I know your mom had enough to fix this." And I say, "How about hello? How about my condolences?" And then I hang up. Next story. My in-laws lived very modestly. He worked blue collar, she was a nurse. They never appeared to have money, but my dad-in-law inherited a bunch of farmland from his parents. When my in-laws passed away, we, along with my brother-in-law, inherited that land. It was rented out to farmers, so it was extra income every year. But we finally decided to sell it. It was a lot of land, and we made a small fortune on it. There really isn't anyone left on my husband's side of the family, and my side thinks my husband's side was poor and beneath them. We never told them about the land or the money we got for it. We also live modestly, so no one knows. Knowing my family, that's for the best. Next story. I inherited my grandparents' trust after my father died just before the cutoff date that it would be fully in his name. Basically, it meant that my dad couldn't access all of the trust for X number of years after my grandfather's death, meaning it stayed in the family when he died rather than pass over to his gold-digging spouse. I had to change my phone number and move to avoid the phone calls in middle of the night showing up at my door from his spouse and her children. Once or twice a year, she tries to reach out to me still through Facebook or email. However, she has an old email address that I use for spam/joining websites, and I got her blocked on Facebook now. 2 out of 3 of her children are in jail too. I also have had friends who believe I will just pay for everything when we hang out. Go out to eat with them, and they will order that super expensive steak and think I would float the bill. They learned the hard way that I wasn't going to pay, and ended up effing themselves for the week or month. Just because I have the money doesn't mean I have the money. Most of it is still going in the trust fund. I only pull out enough to get through the month while I go through school. In fact, I can only access a portion of the funds until I reach certain ages, 35 and 40 now. So obviously, I want to play it smart and use it for things I need, like food, rent, gas, and my bills. Next story. Someone I used to be good friends with was the only one to help take care of his grouchy old grandfather who basically lived in a shack in Mississippi. I would like to note, because it's relevant, that this friend was very liberal and the only one in his family to support things like gay marriage. His grandfather never really commented on it, but everyone else was obsessed with the gays and how they were ruining this country. They were also all very nasty to my friend for being liberal. They hated him. So Grandpa dies, and a shocking surprise to everyone, he'd apparently saved up tons of money over the years. Not millions, but high 6 figures. And he left it all, every penny, to my friend. And suddenly, surprise, surprise, everyone comes out of the woodwork wanting money. They took my friend to court over it. Well, he won, and he got to keep all of the money. And you know what he did with it? Donated all of it to organizations supporting gay rights, in his relatives' names. Holy crap, what an absolutely liberal Chad move. That's freaking awesome. He donated the money in their names. Now all their friends, family, and racist coworkers are going to be like, Clyde, do you support gay people now? And he's like, no, I'm still a horrible human being, trust me. But the donation will always say otherwise. Anyway, next story. So my grandparents owned a small business as well as a modest little farm. They and one of my uncles, T, ran both all by themselves. It's been that way since I was a child. My grandpa mostly took care of the animals and T mostly took care of the business, but it was very much a partnership between the two of them. When I was young, most of my aunts and uncles lived on my grandparents' land, but in recent years, they've all moved away, except for my Uncle T. My grandmother died when I was a child, and even my grandfather passed about 3 years ago. He left everything to my Uncle T. Everything meaning a ramshackle old house, a small farm with a dozen or so cows and some chickens, a few broken down old cars, and a struggling small business. T inherited everything because A, he was the only one of my grandparents' kids who hadn't moved far away, and B, he had spent his entire life working on the farm and the business. Well, this didn't sit well with the rest of my family. They knew my grandpa had no money, but they thought leaving everything to T was unfair. They went to T to sell the house, land, and business and divide the money with the rest of them. That farm was their childhood home, and T didn't want to sell it. Although none of his siblings seemed to care, T was still running the business and had very little other income, so selling it would put him out of a job. He refused to sell, and the result has been most of my family no longer speaking to each other. It really hurts to see how a family that was always so close and full of love can change overnight because of money and hurt feelings. As a kid, I spent every weekend on that farm, spending time with my family, and now all of that's gone. Next story. I am 100% expecting to have a story for threads like this soon. My grandma is 90, in a nursing home, and has at best a couple semi-lucid hours a week. My aunt visits her daily. My mom visits her 1 to 2 times a week. My aunt brought my grandma to her house, where she had a lawyer waiting and had my grandma sign a new will. The old will would have split the money 50-50. We have no idea what the new will says. When my mom asked if she could see the will, my aunt got pissed and told her she never wanted to talk to her again. My grandma, though, she doesn't remember signing anything, and she doesn't even grasp what a will is anymore. We're talking about a decent amount of money here, like hundreds of thousands. My aunt has always been pretty well off. Growing up, she was always the rich relative to me. I have no idea why she'd destroy her relationship with her sister over this. At this point, I'm kind of hoping all of the money gets eaten up by medical expenses. Next story. My dad passed away when I was 13. He wasn't married, and my aunt took over his estate. My aunt and I, we hate each other. I never knew why until I was like 16 or 17. My dad's family grew up very poor. There were 4 of them, 2 boys and 2 girls. One aunt and one uncle had severe learning disabilities. My dad and the evil aunt did not. They were very close growing up. Evil aunt thought the other 2 were an embarrassment to her most of the time, but dad was close to them too. Then I came along. Evil aunt did not like my mom one bit, so apparently she told my dad to choose between us and her and the family. I knew they didn't speak for a very long time when I was little, but never thought much of it as I was a kid. Then we started going over there occasionally, and Dad seemed really happy about it. But she was mean as hell when he wasn't around. I never said anything. Anyways, fast forward to Dad passing away. I was Daddy's little girl, so I was crushed. Mom and Dad had split years ago, and he never married his girlfriend, so evil aunt did the estate. Right after he passed away, she called my mom and said I couldn't step foot on the property and I wasn't to touch any of my dad's things. This didn't work out because my dad's girlfriend's mom owned the place and told my mom I was more than welcome there. Dad's girlfriend got everything I wanted boxed up and gave it to me. As far as we knew, he didn't have a life insurance policy except for a $10,000 one through work that I got half of when I turned 18. Dad's girlfriend got the other half. Then, when I was 16 or 17, I get a phone call from my other aunt. Evil aunt had been asking her questions about an $80,000 life insurance policy of my father's. She was trying to find a way to get it without me knowing about it. My other aunt had learning disabilities but wasn't completely stupid, so she immediately called my mom. We looked into it and called my dad's old attorney, and she handled everything free of charge. When I turned 18, I went to her office and she handed me a cashier's check. All of a sudden, I had tons of friends I never had before. This was before my raging drug addiction kicked in, so I let my mom control the account it was in, as I had her name on it too. Then, friends wanted down payments for new vehicles and constantly wanted to go do things, but I was expected to pay. I lost a lot of friends really fast. Then I got with my ex-husband. I thought we were a match made in heaven and bought him everything he wanted. Fueled my drug addiction, took my mom off the account. Before I knew it, I blew through all of it and was broke. Suddenly, he became violent and angry all the time. When the money ran out, so did his love, I guess. It was eye-opening. I stayed with him for years, though, because I loved him. Next story. story. My grandma had mineral rights in her name, and when she was on her deathbed, she realized that all of her kids were money hungry and entrapped in cycles of abuse. She decided to leave it all to her grandchildren and grew it in an account for each of us to take when we turned 18. Now, if you know mineral rights, you know that the money continues to grow. You get a check from an oil company monthly. My aunt, she was the executor of the estate, only one without kids benefiting, so she got a cut as payment for her work. And now, she is currently holding up every legal proceeding to try to keep her cut. She was supposed to sign the estate off over to us 3 years ago, but still refuses to do what the will says. Everyone hates that aunt now. Next story. When my great aunt had a massive stroke, she was deemed unfit to care for herself due to the after effects, and all of her assets we thus put in charge of my grandmother, my mother, and myself. None of the family was particularly awful. It was akin to a tragedy. She was never going to be the same again. Her housekeeper/caregiver, on the other hand, was awful. When she found out the assets were in our name, she began to stalk my grandparents, stalked me on social media, and would routinely call our home numbers demanding a payment of around $10,000 for unpaid services. We asked her what she meant, and she said gas money for buying her groceries and the round trip, staying longer than she had to finish cleaning, and the late-night calls when my great-aunt called her to help her up because she had fallen. There was a contract and payment history indicating that she was paid for everything, including overtime and late-night calls. Eventually, the harassment got so bad that we all got restraining orders on her, and we haven't heard from her since. Next story. Not won or inherited. 30 years of negotiating and settling severe personal injury and wrongful death claims. For both the insurance company, 18 years, and for personal injury law firm, 12 years, and have dispersed large sums of money to literally thousands of people over 30 years. Can tell you that the one constant when the money is transferred is the fear of others finding out how much they got. They are not happy about getting the money because of the loss incurred. They fear that struggling family member who wasn't a primary heir and the subsequent requests for money. Many have set up a trust or took an annuity payout just to create a buffer between the money and other family members. Next story. Well, a few years ago, one of my uncles died and left me around $59,000. I had just kicked a heroin addiction and had been clean for a few months. Well, I immediately relapsed and was broke in about 3 months. Of course, both friends and friends came out of the woodwork. I never copped without someone with me and supported the habits of multiple people. Had to be Narcaned twice, lost a few people, lost a lot of myself. I'm clean for about 6 months now, though. Sometimes I'm amazed I'm alive. Next story. Watched this a few times over the years, and it's disgusting. My dad's best mate had a lovely place next to the river. He was an only child and left everything to my family. I got a few $1,000s from that. The locals in the village were threatening to challenge the will, though. Effing scumbags. I mean, let it be. You were obviously not as valued as a friend as my dad at our family. We did call him uncle. He was that close in all of our lives. Then, when my dad was getting ill, I'd pop over and see some locals suddenly befriend him. He enjoyed the company, but we would chat about how it could be a bit of a scan on him. But I knew he would not let the money go anywhere, apart from me and my sister. His cousin, though, started mowing his lawn for him when I couldn't do it, and made big gestures of kindness. Now, my dad hated him growing up and called him sneaky. I was saying that he was trying to build bridges. Anyway, Dad eventually passes away. I start getting hacked about doing up the house and we can make all money. This started at the wake. Told those effers where to go and now feel guilty for making Dad think he was wrong. Sorry, Dad, but gave him a piece of my mind. Hopefully you enjoyed that. Next story. I didn't win or inherit money, but I made a very good amount at one point. I had a friend whose girlfriend stayed at my place. Long story, but I ended up being like her parent. I fed her, I bought her alcohol, she slept in my living room when she had nowhere else to go. But no good deed goes unpunished, though. She got to the point where me buying her a box of wine per day was something she got upset if I didn't do. When I started pushing back, she did this for a solid 6 months, she said, "Well, some people can afford life, I cannot." And I told her tough crap and she needed to get a job. I wasn't her boyfriend. She then went and ruined my relationship with my friend who I was super close with since 10th grade by asking me to use my phone to look something up. She then proceeded to go through all of my text messages and found one where I was complaining about her neediness and told him I was talking crap. To be fair, I was, but at the same time, this was after I had told her to get her crap together. Not to mention, she had no car or license. So when I got home, it was literally me taking her all the places she needed to go. She didn't even end up getting her driver's license until she was 28, and that was only because she had a kid and had to be able to take herself/the kid places. Next story. I inherited a sum by a great aunt that was never disclosed. The intention was so that I could take singing lessons. I was too young and still under the emotional influence of my addict mother to question that she shouldn't be in charge of the funds. The money disappeared very quickly.
Okay, what's going on here? Why are all these people who are addicts or no addicts or just scummy people why doesn't the money go to me? I have a normal family. Why can't I get a large sum when somebody passes away? I'm joking. I don't want anybody to die, but just so many drug addicts seem to just have money fall in their lap or their kid's lap at least. I don't know. Anyway, next story. So, my aunt and I were in a car accident as kids, and we each got an account for when we turned 21. My aunt got hers and blew it all in less than a month, $30K, buying crap for her friends, vacations, etc. For my birthday, right after she got the money, she gave me $100. Now, my mom and grandma had asked her if they could use only $1K of the money to repay something so we did not lose our house. My aunt said no because she thought they just wanted her money. After she blew through the $30K, she had the balls to tell me she wanted the $100 back. I told her to F off. Turns out my mom had to use the savings in my account to save us from losing the house, but she didn't ask or tell me till after the fact. I didn't care at the time though, but it really pissed me off that she still let my aunt get away with it, considering she lives with us and always has. Next story. Kind of the opposite, but when my father took his own life, he had a $400,000 life insurance policy. 6 days before he did it, he changed it from my sister and myself to his sister. We were 16 at the time and they weren't close. She told us he spoke to her about it and he wanted to make sure we went to college and that she would take care of it. A year later, we never heard from her again. My grandmother, his and her mom, got sick from heart failure, and my sister and I moved in with her our senior year to take care of her. She was disgusted with my aunt's actions. She never came to visit when my grandma was sick, and when the AC unit broke, July in Las Vegas, it was $10,000 to replace. And she refused to help my grandma because she's gonna die soon. My grandma and I had an estate attorney come and change everything in her will to my sister and I. So now we have a house fully paid off that's worth about my dad's insurance policy. All of my aunt's childhood pictures, diaries, mementos, she never even came to the funeral. Funny thing is, her husband is an engineer and makes money, but money, it changes people. Next story. I may have to deal with this for my wife concerning my father-in-law. He lives with a pauper's lifestyle on the outside, but he's got money. 7-figure life insurance policy, deep 6-figure retirement policy. He barely has any bills, and his siblings know this. I fear that when he passes, they will get into his house and ransack all of his firearms and everything else of value before we even have a chance to legally take possession of it. They live in another state, and my wife is an only child. He's left everything he owns to her, and despite being nice during the holidays, I can see the resentment in some of their eyes because he worked hard for his money, and some of them are in their 50s and haven't had a steady job ever in their life. They've already managed to steal 5 acres of land from him when his father was still alive. Next story. I'm going to use arbitrary numbers to illustrate the point, but these won't be far off. Long-lost great-uncle or something, so distant don't even know the actual relation, passed away and asked his estate to be divided equally between his sons and daughters' children, my mom's generation. So the daughter had 2 kids, the son had 8. The greedy cousins on the daughter's side thought dividing equally meant 50-50 between the sons' and daughters' families. Literally everyone else in the world understands dividing equally means between the 10 people. Greedy cousins insisted they were right. My mom and aunts and uncles told them to stop being so greedy and just accept it's between 10 and then move on. Greedy cousins, though, got lawyers involved. After a long time, lawyers determined that dividing equally means dividing equally, everything that was left after their fees. So imagine the estate was a small house worth $100,000 where everyone would receive $10,000. Not exactly yacht-buying territory, but absolutely not to be sniffed at either. Well, total lawyer fees after all of that nonsense was around $80K. So everyone received $2K inheritance. Next story. My grandfather passed away just before New Year's. There was an inheritance and also some items with my name on them. Both are missing. My uncle cannot find them anywhere as he was the one cleaning the house. Suspects are my older brother and my father. My older brother is actually addicted to using weed, to the point where he either didn't pay or crossed his drug dealer, who then came to his house and tried to break in while his toddler was there. He spent all money meant for food for his child on weed. He is the only person I've met who is nuts on the stuff and won't go a day without using. Then my father dates and dumps women as soon as they reach their mid-20s. That is when the relationships also begin to get sour. He has a favorite child who he treated like gold.
He follows Chinese upbringing, so I got hit a lot and often forced to do/learn something he wanted to do a lot and would be seen as a disappointment. He would also be very disappointed if I didn't follow Chinese customs. The favorite was the one that was treated normally. He is a very selfish man. He wants to look and feel important so he can show off to others. He stole often and even tried to steal the things, art sets very expensive, that my grandfather gave to me as a child. So, both of them want money for selfish reasons. It's a father-like son situation. The items, however, were no doubt taken by my father as punishment for refusing to deal with his crap anymore and telling his girlfriends about each other. That was fun. But I don't care about the money though. I just care for the items. One of them was a book which my grandfather was to write all of the amazing things he had done when he was younger. He traveled often, and he used to tell me and show me all that he had done. I'm angry at the both of them for doing this, and hurt that my father would do this rather than try to actually be a father at a time like this. Funerals either bring you closer or push you apart. Next story. When my biological father passed away, he had left 2 life insurance policies in my name. One for $35,000 was pretty straightforward. The other, for $150,000, was set up to be paid out in a trust in my name, with my mother as a trustee until I was 21, all according to his will. He passed on my 19th birthday. After my 21st birthday, I went to the bank to transfer everything, and there was no money, or even a trust in my name. I called up my mother, and she insists that a man that she never married, who she despised, intended the policy was for her, and that there was no will. I have no idea where it all went because she has $250,000 or more in debt 11 years later. We fell out a few years ago, but we're good now. I just don't mix money with family and friends anymore.
So, first thing, previous story, that guy's dad sounds like Leonardo DiCaprio ditching the girls in their mid-20s. As for this story, I don't know how you can reconcile with mommy after that, because if that was me, bye. Like, girl, what? You're $250K in debt. You snatched my $150K and now we're just good? I don't know. I'm petty like that. That's just me. And also, for any younger viewers, I guess one thing that we can learn from this video is that if you are given money, try and check in on it every now and then if you're a minor or under the age, or if somebody else is watching over the money for you. And before we wrap things up, I would just like to leave you with one last thing. The AI comments pissed me off. How can you listen to this right now and think it's AI? So if there's any AI comments in the video, unironic ones, point to this timestamp in the video so that they can feel stupid when they know that a human is insulting them. Hey, what's up? Anyway, guys, we're at the end of the video. Thank you all so much for watching, commenting, not being AI, and bye-bye.